Okay, so welcome to the first of 2024's workshops. Tonight is Ultimate Weight Loss Essentials. This is a workshop that I ran twice towards the end of last year with lots of good results, lots of good feedback. So I thought, why not kick off the year with it this year? So my first question, actually, no, I won't share that screen yet. My first question is, and this is to everyone watching on replay as well, and for anyone watching on replay, I'd love you to take the time to think about the answers to some of the questions that I ask and even make some notes if you want along the way. Would you like to feel good about yourself, feel good in your clothes, maybe find a little bit more energy and head into, can you believe it's 2024, knowing that you've got a nice plan for your health and to feel good about yourself? Is that something that's appealing? So what we'll talk about tonight is how you can set yourself up for long-term success, how you can reduce your risk of chronic diseases such as diabetes. I'm going to share some strategies that don't involve calorie counting. They don't involve shakes or meal replacements or any of those sorts of fad diets. They are just tried, tested opportunities, changes that you can make that can have an impact on your weight moving forward. So you'll see what's possible for you, you'll learn some strategies, and you'll come away with actionable items that you can put into place instantly. Workshop, not a lecture, so I will ask questions along the way. I'm going to flip between screens because I do have some slides to share, so bear with me while I manage my little technical side of things. Other people in the past have said similar things. They want to find out about good food choices. They want to work out how they can actually motivate themselves, what's going on in their mindset, what's getting in their way. Quite often people are struggling with weight gain from perimenopause, or that hormonal fluctuations play a big role in weight gain as well. So there's all sorts of different reasons as to why people sign up for these workshops. And what I find is weight gain really is quite an interesting conundrum, given just, those few reasons that you and I have spoken about. There's other reasons that come into it as well. If there was an easy fix, we wouldn't be facing the current health crisis that we are in Australia, which is that 2/3 of adults are overweight or obese, unfortunately. I'm just going to go back to screen sharing and work through. You see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2/3. And so what's led to this? Everyone who signs up obviously signs up because they're interested in losing weight somehow, in some way, sorry. And I wonder, when we pause and really start to think about what might be behind the weight gain for people. I just mentioned hormones. For a lot of people, it could be stress. Stress plays a major role in, just have a look at something, a major role in weight gain. For some people, it's just the environment that they're in. Particularly post-COVID, right, we're all working from home, or not all, but a lot of us are working from home, which means there's not a lot of movement in our day. There's not even a walk to the bus stop or the station. There's literally a walk from the study to the kitchen. And in my house, that's not very far.
Yeah, mine too.
Yours too. So we find without even, it's completely unintentional, but we spend the day sitting, focused on our work, pop to the kitchen, come back. And, if you're watching, watching a step counter, you can have days where you may be lucky to do 2,000 or 3,000 steps. Just completely unintentional. So it could be the environment that we're in. I mentioned could be hormones. Can be an underlying health issue. If people have thyroid, an underactive thyroid, for example, that plays a big role in weight gain. So it's always worth, if you're not already thinking about it, what are the underlying factors that could be playing a role? And typically it's not just one. Sometimes it is, but typically it's a range of things. But what could be playing a role in your current feelings about your weight? Oops, I went backwards instead of forwards. There we go. Stress I've talked about. We can't always decrease stress that's coming at us. The only thing we can control is our response to stress. But as long as we are stressed, hold that thought. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Stress is one of the big ones. Hormones, as I mentioned, perimenopause, when things start to go into a real state of flux, and then even post menopause. So once we sort of move through menopause and beyond, our bodies are geared towards holding on to our fat stores a little bit more. Seems a bit unfair, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to
Yeah.
talking to my oncologist the other. That was my final appointment with my oncologist. He's very happy with me, so he was just checking in with me, and he said something to the effect of the all the things that you poor women are lumbered with, and it wasn't said in a condescending or patronizing tone. It was just a very genuine, you guys
Like
get more
factual.
deal. Yeah. Yeah, which was, it made me laugh. He's a lovely man. And he said at the end, I'm fairly confident I'll never have to see you again, which, you know, you sort of want to go see him again because he was so nice. But anyway, he's got lots to deal with.
Yeah.
Thyroid I mentioned. So the thyroid is a very small gland that sits here in the base of our throat that governs our metabolism, amongst other things. So when it gets sluggish, metabolism slows right down. And thyroid problems also more common in women and often pop up in later life as well. So something to keep an eye on. And then, as we know, and as we have talked about in the past, Megan, there is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to weight loss. If there was, and as I said earlier, if there was an easy fix, we would know about it. Having said that, when we get the right foods matching a person's blood chemistry in the right proportions, so the right amount of protein versus the right amount of carbs for that individual, changes for everyone. When we get those right, that's when we start to actually see that our bodies can release weight when we give it the right environment. Of course, the challenge becomes knowing what foods are right for us, because we can eat really, really well and still struggle to lose weight, because it could be that there's a food that our body doesn't quite like. It's not allergic to it, obviously, might be ever so slightly intolerant, but we don't get any, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't get any signs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're eating really well. And I've had clients who I've worked with in the past who've been eating super, super well, still unable to lose weight. And until we get those foods right, then the body finds itself in a position to release weight.
Right.
So let me just come back to the notes. Okay, so I do have a very quick little exercise for you. And again, anyone watching on replay, pause the recording and do this as well. It's not a personal trainer type of exercise. I'm not going to tell you to get up and do some push-ups or star jumps or anything like that, especially not after dinner. What I want you to do is pop out to the fridge or the pantry, have a look, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Ask yourself what foods are really right for me. Now, you know the ones that are, you know, really not right. There's the biscuits, the sweets, the white bread, processed snacks, sugars, sauces with sugars, alcohol, things like that. I just want you to come back with what is a rough percentage, and trust your instincts there, of the amount of foods in your pantry and or your fridge that really aren't serving you. Okay, so I talked about stress. And I paused because I knew that I wanted to talk about it more. So the question becomes, how much stress is going on in your life? Whether it be from work, whether it be from home, whether it be from your family, it might be kids, it might be aging parents, it might be relatives, could be partners. Is there a lot of stress hitting you from a number of different angles? Stress causes us to release a hormone called cortisol. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Cortisol causes our heart rate and our blood pressure to increase. It tells our bodies to mobilize glucose so that if we need to fight or if we need to run away from whatever the big stressor is, you know, the saber-toothed tiger behind us, if we need to fight it or if we need to run away, we have the energy there. Problem is, and there you go, there's a saber-toothed tiger, just because you see so many of them running around Sydney. I always say there's we obviously don't see them running around Sydney, although peak hour drivers could be a little bit close. But again, I work from home, so luckily we're not in peak hour very often these days, thank goodness. Consistent stress, though, means that we have that constant high level of cortisol, which means our blood sugar is always higher than it should be. When our blood sugar is higher than it should be, our insulin comes up. Insulin, you probably also, I'm sure you've heard of as well. It is the hormone that our pancreas releases that tells our body to pull the sugar out of the bloodstream and store it in the cells. If it doesn't get used up by the cells as energy, it gets stored as fat. It's as simple as that. For energy for later, again, because back when we were in our cavewoman days, we didn't know where our next meal was coming from. So it's a hangover from many, 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 many zillions of years ago. And our brains and our bodies haven't quite caught up with the fact that the stress that we encounter in our day-to-day lives now is not life or death stress. And therefore, our body's having not caught up, the cortisol stays up and has all that flow-on effects that I've mentioned. Can you tell me the last time that you were really, really hungry? Not just a bit peckish, not the, getting close to a mealtime, I'm a bit hungry, but absolutely ravenous. Can you remember? If at all?
No, I can't remember.
Can't remember. And if you were hungry, or if you are hungry, how soon can you get hold of some food?
Well, pretty soon.
Pretty quickly, right? Yes.
Yeah, because I'm working at home, or if
exactly.
I'm not too
There's snacks everywhere we look. We've got constant access, 24/7. The snack industry would have us believe that it is essential to eat every 2 hours or every 20 minutes, really, if you believe them. Incidentally, that picture is blurry because it has to be. It'll be something to do with the brands. But it still upsets me no end every time I look at it. Oh, it's a blur. I just want to, tighten it into focus. When we eat, in the same way that when we're stressed, the cortisol causes our blood sugar to go up. When we eat, our blood sugar goes up. That is perfectly normal physiological response. The insulin comes out as a result, also a perfectly normal physiological response. The sugar gets pulled into our cells. As I said, not used for energy, gets stored as fat. Now, just to make life fun, just stop that share. Once we start to get a bit older, perimenopause, menopause, that extra fat gets stored as belly fat. So we get people who are eating well, who are exercising lots, doing all the right things and still not getting any change. So stress obviously can play a role, but constant snacking plays a big role as well. When we are constantly keeping those levels of blood sugar higher, unintentionally, we're telling our body to store stuff. We also fall into a trap, perhaps if you've got teenagers in the house, of starting to dish out bigger serves of food, or maybe you've got a partner who weighs more than you, and so you get into that habit, I don't know, I was doing this, of serving up the same amount of food for me as for my partner. Depending what's going on, sometimes we eat too late, particularly challenging if we've got kids doing all extracurricular activities and you don't get home till late, and then there's a bit of a rush as well. And then if we lack sleep, we don't get enough sleep. We burn most of our fat when we're sleeping. Contrary to popular belief, we like to think we burn fat by, going for a walk, or definitely you do some when you're doing some weights, but most of it goes when you're sleeping. So if you're lacking sleep, not sleeping well enough, not getting enough sleep, you're making it difficult for yourself as well. So right there, you get to see just how much weight is so much more than just calories in and calories out. Yeah. So what can you do? Share screen. Where have you gone? Oh, me too. It's great.
It's very handy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when sometimes you can't find the mouse; it just disappears.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my top tips that help. Assuming there are no underlying health issues that require you to eat consistently, or assuming that there's no history of disordered eating. Keeping a food diary can be really valuable to have a look at when you're eating, how much you're eating, and most importantly, what is the underlying reason behind eating. It'll give you some really clear insight into, are you bored? Are you eating because you're stressed? Is there an emotional component to what you're eating? Are you eating because you're really tired and you just want to boost your energy up? Are you having serving sizes that worked for you in the past but no longer serve you? Interesting realization for me once I stopped all my running training post the marathon last year. I've been able to eat loads. It doesn't work so well anymore. So, those as things change in our environment, we need to adjust that as well. And we tend to forget that. Or as I said, having the same serving size as a partner or a growing teenager when we don't need that much. So keeping that food diary just helps to bring some awareness to the forefront. And one of my favorite sayings, you've probably heard me saying this, is notice what you notice. So that's the first tip. Number 2, timing. Pay attention to the gap between meals. If you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, what you're not doing is you're not allowing that insulin, which goes up after every meal, to drop right back down again. And as long as it's hovering up here, it's encouraging our body to store fat. It needs to drop right down in between meals to be super, super quiet and, do its own thing for a little while until we eat again. Ideally, again, assuming no underlying health conditions that require you to eat, to balance your blood sugar, such as diabetes, for example, ideally, 3 well-balanced meals a day should be all we need. We shouldn't need snacks in between. If you do need something in between, have a look at not just the meal that you've just had, but the one before. Because if the one before wasn't enough, that sets a chain reaction or creates a flow-on effect. So I know everybody says breakfast is, well, they don't say it so much anymore, but that old line, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Breakfast itself isn't the most important meal necessarily, but getting the balance right at breakfast is important. Because if you get that balance right, your blood sugar and your insulin goes up, and then it comes down nice and steadily, and then you have lunch and it comes up, and it just creates this beautiful wave. If you have a breakfast that's too high in carbs, for example, and not high enough in protein, then I'm not scared of carbs, but it's all about the balance. So if you have too high in carbs and your blood sugar shoots up and the insulin shoots up, and then it comes down really quickly, what you then find is your next meal, it brings it back up again, but it doesn't bring it up far enough that it'll come down nice and slowly before your next meal. Does that make sense? Yeah. I feel like I need a whiteboard behind me to demonstrate.
No, you were doing it perfectly with your hands.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
All good.
So it's really useful to have a look at when you have that crushing hunger that we sometimes do get between meals. What did I just eat, but what did I eat before? And am I doing myself a disservice along the way? So that's the other reason why the food diary is helpful as well. So not only are we looking at what is the timing and the gap between your meals, but what have you eaten and when? Number 3, this is probably the easiest one. Start with protein. I've probably told you this one before. Starting with protein first just helps slow your digestion of everything else, because protein is a little bit harder to digest. So it means the rest of the nutrients, including the carbohydrates, don't hit your bloodstream quite as quickly, which in turn means that the insulin comes out a little bit more steadily. And when that comes out steadily, the blood sugar regulation is all nice and steady, and we get that nice, steady, gradual drop, keeping you feeling full until the appropriate time. I don't think I said the appropriate time. 5 hours is what metabolic balance recommends between meals, from finishing one to starting the next, to really allow your body to fully digest and to really allow that insulin to really come back down again.
Right. Okay.
So starting with protein, an easy one to do. Number 4, really having a totally honest look at yourself, bit of introspection. How often when someone says, how are you? And you say, I'm fine. Fingertips, hanging on by fingertips. Are we putting ourselves first, giving ourselves enough downtime, asking for help when we need it? And we all know, particularly, and most of the people who signed up for the workshop tonight, and I know who are going to be watching it on replay, mums, work, family commitments, as I said, not necessarily just kids, but aging parents, relatives, all those sorts of things. And we are just conditioned to put ourselves last. And right now is the time to put ourselves first, because if we're not in the best of our health, we can't be of service, for want of a better word, to everybody around us anyway, or to ourselves. So a bit of honest introspection as to how much we're looking after ourselves first is really, really valuable. And then movement. Now, movement, the exercise that best serves us as we get older, and we all know this, do we always follow through? I know I don't, is the weight-based exercises. Cardio, important, yes, for heart health, and generally serves us really well when we're younger. But as we get older, that weight-based stuff, because we start to lose muscle mass, and we know that muscle burns fat. Not only that, but we're setting ourselves up for a much better long-term, what's the word I'm looking for? Prognosis? Long-term health, particularly around things like osteoporosis, for example. Osteoporosis, our bones are going to get more frail with age. That's just the nature of it. But if we have strong muscles supporting them, then we're less likely to have a fall that causes the problem. So it's about doing everything we can to keep ourselves in good health moving into later years as well. And that weight-based exercises, so important. It doesn't necessarily need to involve using actual weights. It could be just body weight. It could be using resistance bands. It could be using little hand weights as well, whatever works for you. The high intensity stuff like the spin classes and the running and that sort of stuff, yes, it might be good for your mental health, definitely good for your heart health, but the strength work, as I said, builds muscle, burns fat, and increases your metabolism. So including some form of weight or resistance training, ideally 3 times a week, and if you can, interspersing it with some high intensity stuff, that gives you a really nice balance of exercise that is going, that's going to contribute to weight loss. Hold on, I'll just stop the share for a minute. Okay, so quick recap. 5 tips. Number 1, keep a food diary. Notice what you notice. In particular, what are the underlying factors contributing to what you're eating when? Number 2, take a look at how long is your gap between meals. Are you just automatically going for morning tea and afternoon tea because you always do? Number 3, start with protein every meal. And if you're having a snack, start that with protein as well. Even if you're having an apple, I would rather you had a little bit of cheese or a couple of nuts before the apple, just to help balance that out, slow down the digestion. Number 4, I just swapped hands. Number 4, check in on stress, because we know that stress has a big impact. And number 5, make friends with strength-based workouts. And I've got to be honest, as I said, I'm the same. I do try and get to the gym, but you know me with my running as well, that tends to take precedence, but that's not enough. And that's not enough of an excuse for me. I need to start owning that more. I offer is what I call a healthy body, healthy mind strategy call. This is about looking at your health goals, checking what's been getting in your way and what's going on for you right now, and coming up with the ideal strategy to help you meet your goals in the quickest and easiest way. So for everyone accessing the replay, and Megan, you're welcome to, we can have that conversation again if you'd like as well. Everyone accessing the replay, I will have that link in the email that I send with the replay. So feel free to book that call and see what can be done to help you move forward. Now, I just wanted to share one more thing. So I mentioned metabolic balance before. This is a client who I have worked with for well over a year, and we've worked on a number of different aspects of her health in that time, including gut issues, including mindset, including spending a lot of time focusing on putting herself and her own needs first. And then towards the end of last year, she said to me, okay, that's it, because she knew I was trained in metabolic balance, but she'd put it off for a while. And then she hit the point where she said, nope, that's it. need to do something. I want to do it. And so we started that program with her towards the end of last year. And she's now lost, in 12 weeks, she's lost 10 kilos. And that includes Christmas and time away with family. And during Christmas and time away with family, she just focused on maintaining. So making some sensible choices, but not sticking fully to her plan, because she was away on holidays and she wanted to enjoy it. And she's now back and getting back on track, and because she has more to lose. But in my mind, 10 kilos in 12 weeks with Christmas thrown in, phenomenal result. Huge effort. Huge effort. I had another client in similar circumstances, who I also had been working with for probably 12 to 18 months. And we did a lot of work also on her gut health and also on her mindset and stress and so on. And she and her husband both started Metabolic Balance middle of last year. They signed up together. Within 3 weeks, she'd lost 6 kilos and 9 centimeters off her waist, and her husband, and within 12 weeks, she'd lost 12 kilos and 11 centimeters off her waist, and her husband lost around 20 kilos. And
20 kilos in how many weeks?
He lost his 20 in, I reckon, 4 months.
Wow. Okay.
And she lost 12. And then lost 12 within 12 weeks, and then still lost a few more within another month or so after that. And so they did that. When did they do it? I reckon it was July. And I just checked in with her this week to see how they went over Christmas. And she said they both maintained, again, only put on between 1 and 2 kilos over Christmas, both of them.
Okay.
On plan. So maintained it really nicely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, super impressed with them as well. And what they were finding once they'd lost that weight was everything else fell into place. So her husband had a lot of back problems, a lot of pain, all of that dissipated. She found she was sleeping a whole lot better, and she was and you could see it in her skin, in her face. She was and people were like, what have you done?
Yeah.
What's going on? What's changed? So and I think I probably said that to you. Metabolic Balance was on my radar for a long time before I trained in it, because I wanted to know for sure that it wasn't flash in the pan stuff. And it was simply the result of working with so many other practitioners who I work with around Australia, who've had so many good results with their clients over the years, that made me think, okay, this is something I need to be offering my clients, because it has results, and then it's had those great results. So
yeah. No, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one thing about that?
Yes, of course you can. I'm just going to stop the screen share. So what if, and this is again for everyone watching on replay as well, what if you had a plan of attack that was perfect for you? If you knew that you could lose weight in 3 months or 2 months or even 6 weeks, and you were prepared to invest in your health in the future and in your future, what would that look like for you? And if you want to book a Healthy Mind, Healthy Body, Healthy Body, Healthy Mind, I can't remember which order I do it in, strategy call, please do so. As I said, I'll put that link in the email when I send out the recording.